Thank you. And I call Ms Michaela Boyle.
Question 3.
Principal Deputy Speaker, there was no contact between my private office and the police service before the arrest of Gerry Adams. I do not expect to be notified in advance of operational decisions about specific individuals.
Thank you. And I call Ms Michaela Boyle for
Does the Minister agree with me that the fact that the PSNI contacted the British Secretary of State and indeed ignored your office does nothing to inspire confidence in policing and justice? Indeed, does it not smack in the face of old habits from an old era?
I think, Principal Deputy Speaker, Ms Boyle doesn't quite understand the role of the Secretary of State in this area, which is entirely different from my role, where issues are relating to matters of national security. But I would suggest if she wishes to question the behaviour of the Secretary of State, she should contact the Secretary of State. I am satisfied that the police officers in this case behaved entirely properly.
And I call Mr Paul Given.
Principal Deputy Speaker, not only, I'm sure, Minister, do you agree that the police should be free to carry out their operational duties without fear from any political repercussions, but does he also agree that the Police Ombudsman's Office, currently investigating 2 cases related to Gerry Adams, and also the Public Prosecution Service, which asked the Attorney-General to carry out an independent review of why it didn't prosecute Mr Adams based on what knowledge he had to do with his niece, should also be free to publish their reports, which currently for the PPS is 6 months now in waiting, and they too should be free to publish that report so that the public can see whether or not they've carried out their job.
Well, I certainly agree with Mr Given that all the agencies of the justice system should be free to carry out their jobs properly and impartially, as I believe they all seek to do. I also believe that that means it's a responsibility of each of us, and not all in one part of this House, to ensure that pressure is not placed on those agencies.
Call Mr Tom Elliott.
Thank you very much, Principal Deputy Speaker. Following on from that, I'd like to ask the Minister if he's had any discussions with the leaders of Sinn Féin in relation to some of their members' comments in their support or lack of support for the Police Service of Northern Ireland.
I have had no specific discussions on that topic, Principal Deputy Speaker. I believe it should be possible for members of this House to show the political maturity that understands their role without being lectured by a minister.
Mr Fergal McKinney.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Minister? And continuing on from that question, would the Minister agree that Sinn Féin allegations of political policing, accompanied by remarks about how dare they touch our leader, were both wrong and irresponsible?
Well, I can only but agree with Mr McKinney. I think it's fairly obvious from the comments that I made that I reject any attempt to interfere in the justice system, any of the relevant agencies, from any quarter. And clearly some of the comments which were made at that time by members of Sinn Féin were entirely inappropriate, as indeed have comments made by members of other parties in other circumstances, for example over public order matters.
I call Mrs Pam Cameron.
Question number 4, please.
Principal Deputy Speaker, with permission, I will take questions 4 and 14 together. I have given a commitment through the Community Safety Strategy that the justice system will tackle hate crime and the harm it causes. My department chairs a multi-agency group set up to deliver the strategy and range of actions being taken to combat hate crime. Legislation is in place which allows for an increase in sentence for offences which are aggravated by hostility because of race, religion, sexual orientation or disability. My department is working with the PSNI to promote the work of hate crime advocates, who are a consistent point of contact for victims for practical and emotional advice and assistance. PCSPs also play an important role in making communities safer. Action plans for 2014-15 will identify where interventions are required in tackling hate crimes. A practical measure in place to support victims is the Hate Incident Practical Action Scheme, aimed at providing personal protection and safety measures at home. In partnership with the Housing Executive and PSNI, my department is examining ways of promoting and raising awareness of the scheme. In relation to recent racist attacks, I discussed the increase with the Chief Constable and met with the Secretary of State and senior police officers last week regarding action being taken. I also had the opportunity, as you are aware, Principal Deputy Speaker, to attend a recent Black and Ethnic Minority Parliament and respond to questions on work being taken forward to tackle these attacks and confirm that such views are not shared or supported by the majority of our people. My officials attended a recent meeting in Belfast City Hall regarding these racist attacks and will participate in any further groups or actions arising from that meeting.
And I call Ms Cameron for a supplement.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer and add I and my party's condemnation of all racist and hate crimes indeed. But can I ask the Minister if he is satisfied with the contribution from the PCSPs in tackling hate crime?
Well, Principal Deputy Speaker, clearly there are a range of actions being taken by different PCSPs. I know from the last quarterly meeting with PCSP managers with my officials that a number of them have very significant issues related to their work in their plans for the coming year. And indeed, I will be writing in the next day or two to PCSPs to encourage them to look at that issue, to look at sharing best practice and using some of the examples which are already underway in some areas to promote action against hate in all different respects, because there is clearly an issue which must be addressed as we seek to look wider at the community safety strategy for all of us.
And I call Mr Declan McAleer.
Will the Minister share the view of Assistant Chief Constable Will Kerr that many of these hate crimes, particularly in parts of Belfast, are orchestrated by the UVF and are effectively a form of ethnic cleansing?
Well, that particular issue that Mr McAleer raises has been addressed in the discussions I've had with ACC Care and with other colleagues of his. There is no doubt that some of the hate crime incidents we have seen, particularly of a racist nature in East Belfast, have had links to the UVF. But we should certainly not suggest that everything connected with hate crime is the responsibility of the East Belfast UVF. Sadly, we've seen hate crime incidents in almost every part of Northern Ireland and in a number of different kinds of areas. But there is no doubt that the police need to ensure that they continue the good work which is already underway, and in particular to tackle that hate crime which comes from specific organisations.
Call Mr John Dallett.
Mr Principal Deputy Speaker, I thank the Minister for his answer. Would the Minister agree with me that hate crime is highly damaging to our international reputation? And would he further agree that it is perhaps time to look at the legislation to ensure that those people guilty of these horrendous crimes are put where they belong, behind bars?
Well, I certainly agree with Mr Dallett that hate crime is one of those issues which can be a potential chill factor to people visiting Northern Ireland or people coming to work in Northern Ireland, or even, I suspect, people to invest in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure that there is a significant need at this point for a review of the legislation as he suggests. The reality is that we do have the opportunities for enhanced sentencing where issues are related to hate crime, and that there are significant matters there where judges can take into account when they award sentences a hate motivation in terms of the 2004 criminal justice orders, references to crimes which are aggravated by hostility. But there is clearly not always an easy case to be made that a particular crime may have been aggravated by hostility, and it's a matter of looking at the practice of the different agencies to ensure that we get that particular motivation taken into account to ensure adequate and appropriate sentencing where it can be.
Well, Mr Stuart Dixon.
Thank you, Principal Deputy Speaker. Minister, in dealing with the whole issue of hate crime, would you agree with me that it is sadly necessary for you and your executive colleagues to reinvigorate the Unite Against Hate campaign in order to remove the scourge of those who commit these sorts of crimes in Northern Ireland?
Well, Principal Deputy Speaker, the original Unite Against Hate campaign, which was launched 5 years ago, was successful in responding to what was seen at the time as a number of high-profile racist incidents. Key partners during that time were the OFM, DFM and the DOJ. Originally, it started with our predecessors in the NIO, as well as the police and the Equality Commission and the Community Relations Council. To some extent, that campaign has lost impetus in recent time, and I think there may well be a case for saying that that should be revamped in the near future. I wrote recently to the First Minister and Deputy First Minister asking that they consider that, asking for an update on the position because there's no FMD-FM-led campaign, and certainly offering my commitment that the Department of Justice would do all it could if we seek to revise the Unite Against Hate campaign, in particular looking at the implications right across Northern Ireland and not merely some of the good work which has been done by Belfast City Council and the police in recent days.
Thank you. And I call Ms Bronwyn McGahan.
Question 5.
Principal Deputy Speaker, the costs of policing the Twiddell protest now exceed £9 million. On the 30th of April 2014, the exact cost was £8.8 million, including opportunity costs of £2.9 million.
Ms McGahan for supplementary.
I thank the Minister for his response. Minister, what conversations have you had with the Chief Constable in relation to what gaps in policing has resulted in this amount of money being squandered?
Well, Principal Deputy Speaker, although Ms McGahan raises an interesting point, I can't say I have discussed specific gaps which have opened up because of the money which has been spent on policing Twiddell. But what I have discussed is the overall issue. It's clear that, for example, there were significantly fewer arrests over the last year because of public order issues and because of resources being diverted to Twiddell around what one might call normal crime because of that. And therefore, the community across Northern Ireland was put at greater risk because police were less active. That's effectively the opportunity cost of £2.9 million. And it certainly is something which causes me significant concern that an issue which should not be continuing to cost has cost such a huge amount of money at a time of decreasing resources, and we have significant pressures on the police and indeed on other parts of the justice system. It really is time that the Twiddell camp went away, people accepted the determination of the Parades Commission and ceased putting pressure on the police service and allowed them to do the job that they should be doing for every part of Northern Ireland.
Thank you. And I call Mr Alvin McGuinness.
Thank you very much, Principal Deputy Speaker, and could I thank the Minister for his forthright answer in relation to the Twiddell protest.